from my perspective, sitting here, it is a massive mess in so many ways. How do you, as a Carolina Panther alum, see where the Panthers sit on June 15th, 2022?
So, to be honest, since I stopped playing, I haven't followed the team as closely. I haven't really been in contact with anyone there. I mean, the only trying to think, the only players that are still there from when I was there are, and I'm still friends with them to this day, JJ Jansen, long snapper, and then McCaffrey, and Shaq Thompson. So I think those are the only three guys that were there. Now I've been out for 4 years now. 2017 season, 18 playoffs was my last game. So obviously you have a lot of turnover in the NFL, but that's crazy. There's only three players still from that the last playoff roster. We haven't been in the playoffs since then. I don't even know if we've had a winning season since then. I'm assuming not, considering we haven't made the playoffs. But yeah, ever since Tepper took over, obviously he's brought in basically everything's new, right? Top to bottom. He's been involved with the soccer team as well. It's obviously being run like a business, and that's what it is, right? But fans supply the revenue to that, and I think he's starting to realize that he needs to put some sort of product, a winning product out there, or you're going to start losing fans. And Charlotte's obviously, it's a growing city, but it's not as big as some of these other markets, right? Dallas, all the big markets across the country, and it's one of the newest franchises. Obviously, it's been here since '95, but I mean, you gotta put winning product out there in the NFL, or these young new fans, especially in Charlotte, they're not going to go to the games. They're not going to watch. So, I mean, I'm in contact. I met Sam Darnold too. I know he's gotten some bad media press over the past couple of years being here, but I think he has a ton of potential. He's a nice dude. Also, I think he works hard. You could see the talent and the upside there early last year when they started 3-0, when McCaffrey was healthy. I think adding Icky, local kid from PD, that's a great add. Shoring up the O-line, I think it all starts there, right? If they're healthy and they're good, McCaffrey's going to stay healthy. Darnold's going to play better. They're going to score more points. Defense was pretty high ranked last year, at least in statistical. I don't know how they track stuff like that anymore, but if the Panthers offense can put up points, I think they can win games. I think the NFC South's one of the weakest divisions in football. So that's 8 of your 17 games.
Right.
Sorry, 6 of your 17 games, not 8. 6 of your 17.
Doesn't
Over a third of your games.
Tom Brady's coming back with Tampa Bay, right? That math works out. I got you 6 out of 16. I'm the Atlanta Falcons, not what they once were for sure. So I can get with you from the division standpoint. The question, I guess, Panthers fans, I think, have to ask themselves is, can Sam Darnold actually be the guy with what you saw in year number one, knowing the offensive line struggles? I'm absolutely with you, man. I'm never one of those guys that says, oh, it's all on the quarterback, because a lot of times quarterback can't make a play, especially with what the Panthers offensive line has been recently. So it sounds like you are encouraged or optimistic that Darnold can be that guy.
Yes, I am. I mean, he obviously has the talent. He was I don't know where he was picked, but he was high first round pick with the Jets. So scouts around the league saw the talent coming out of college. Turnovers has been his problem, and I think if you shore up the O-line and you give him time, and now you have McAdoo calling plays, who's had a good track record with offense, I think that falls into helping Darnold fulfill his potential. So I think the sky's the limit for him, to be honest. He has the talent. Now, going back to Super Bowl year, and I tell people this all the time, Cam's MVP season. What was the one thing that we had that year that we didn't the next year, and why we struggled the next year, is we had no injuries on our offensive line. Khalil was healthy the whole year. Everyone across the board was basically, Trey Turner was young, Norwell, some of those guys, but we didn't have to rotate O-line. We didn't have to, this guy's out, the left tackle's out this week, we got to move the right tackle to left tackle. It was always, that's it. And you can game plan for that every week, and you can rely on that. And I think it's hard to tell with injuries, but I think they have a pretty good core plan up front going into this year. And I think that it's going to help like I said earlier, top to bottom, to McCaffrey, to Darnold, receivers. I mean, they're just a product of what goes on and what I just talked about. So,
Yeah, no doubt about it. From the fan standpoint, I think that the injury situation can be seen as an excuse so many times. And with the salaries being the astronomical numbers they are, I don't think fans have a whole lot of patience or sympathy for that situation. When in reality, it does have it has a tremendous impact, no doubt about it. But hearing you talk about that makes me think that you might think more of Matt Rule as a coach than a lot of Panthers fans might, that are ready for the next guy to come in because Rule hasn't gotten it done. Where are you with the head coach?
so I've never met him, so I don't want to say anything positive or negative about him. I've never played for him, so I can't really comment on that. Now, I will say overall, macroly, and like with college and NFL, college coaches coming to the NFL, there has never really been a lot of success with a successful college coach making the jump to the NFL and being successful there. Let's look at Saban, for example. And I'm talking about your old school college coach that's kind of a hard ass, which I've heard that's kind of Rule's thing. He's a hard ass college type coach. You practice hard, all that stuff, which there's nothing wrong with that. But NFL players respond differently than, let's say, an 18, 19-year-old freshman in college that doesn't really know what's going on. They're just going to do what they're told. I don't know if that translates as well to the NFL. The only college coach I've seen have direct success right in an NFL, and I'm pretty sure he had NFL coaching before college, was Pete Carroll.
Mm-hmm.
But he coaches completely different. He's a player's coach. He's a smile all the time. I'm your friend. And he's had success doing that in the NFL. And I think that's how he had success recruiting and all that at USC prior. So we'll see. I hate putting the blame on a head coach in the first place. I've always said, people ask me, how was Rivera as a head coach? He was great, but I think, and I might be wrong, but three things that I kind of look at with a head coach: you got to handle the media, which Rivera did a good job of. I haven't really followed it, to be honest, with Rule, so I don't know how he does that. The second one's motivate your players, team meetings, in-game situations, motivation. Third is manage your staff. So really, if you're worried about the on-field issues with performance and all that stuff, I think it relates more to position coaches and coordinators. So when we went back, when I was playing with Shula was the OC, if we struggled on offense, it wasn't Rivera's fault to an extent, right? It's Shula, it's directly Shula's fault. And then also let's say the O-line struggled, it's the O-line coach's fault for that week, maybe game planning, all that stuff, which I think fans in the NFL, they get so situated, maybe it's the media's fault. This is Rule's fault. Now, it might be Rule's fault that he didn't put together a good coaching staff and he hasn't managed them properly. But if the team struggles on third and short, I don't know if that's Rule's fault. That might be players' fault for not getting open or whatever the situation is, or directly to the position coaches. So I don't think those kind of coaches get enough pressure from the media or even fans, right? They don't even think about that for the most part.
Well, it's not simple enough. It's not the simplistic off with his head attitude that we get when we watch football and we all love it and the whole thing. And you having been in there, makes sense that you actually know what's going on and know who should be responsible each and every time for that. So with that being said, so what do you make of the move now? You mentioned the offensive coordinator switch in there. From the outside looking in, it's all right. The guy's in charge, the head guy's in charge of the staff. You make moves with your staff. Well,
Yep.
South Carolina Gamecock fans saw Will Muschamp do that notoriously with his offense coordinator. Right? It never worked. So Will Muschamp got the blame and he's out.
Yep.
And that seems to be the situation that Matt Rule is in now. And assuming that not enough gets done this year, to me, this is kind of a playoff or bust season for Matt Rule, especially knowing David Tepper and his kind of aggression and what he's demanding. You see it the same way?
Yeah. And it might even be shorter leash than playoffs or bust. It might be, I
Yeah.
don't know when the bye week is this week, but it might be, you better be above 70% win percentage, whatever the stat is, by halfway through the season or you're out. Because he brought in, I don't know if Rule brought him in or if Tepper brought him in, but McAdoo can easily be a interim coach for half a year.
Mhm.
He's been a head coach in the league, right? It was a
Right.
little harder to do last year. They just made a move to fire Joe Brady
Yep.
halfway through or whenever that was. Um, so we'll see. I think it's a shorter leash than we think. Because what year is this for Rule 3?
I
It's
think
his
he's on
third year.
number 4. I think we might be 4, but I'm not sure. It's
Or,
been underwhelming no matter what it is, right?
regardless, 3 or 4, you've struggled in your first 2 or 3. I mean, we've seen other teams in the league fire coaches after 1. Coley in Houston, some other people. So
No doubt. Roger weighing in says, I saw where Coach Mike Ayers was inducted into the South Carolina Athletic Hall of Fame. Very deserving. Being a Wofford guy yourself, what'd you see? What'd you make of that news?
when did that come out? Is that recent?
Yeah, I think he was in this most recent class, the South Carolina Athletic Hall of Fame. Mike Ayers was the class of 2022. I think he popped
That's
in there.
awesome. I need to reach out to him. Yeah, he was awesome. Great coach. Hope he's chilling at home with his grandkids, playing some golf right now, doing hunting, fishing, whatever he wants to do. But he was a great coach. He falls into that hard ass college coach, and that works at college. And he was at Wofford before I think they were NAIA, or this is way back in the 80s. He was there forever. So good recruiter. And it, like what I said earlier with those 3 points, he didn't do a lot with like on field technique and stuff like that. He was just an amazing recruiter, amazing motivator to the players, and he managed his staff and he let his OC and position coaches do their thing. Same thing on the defensive side. So that's what made him a great coach.
And so what has to change? Is it the relationship between player and coach as opposed to like father son in college? Is it more like uncle or brother in the NFL when you're talking about head coach and player, because now you know how much money he's making, they know what you're making, and you're big boys?
Yeah, it's just a completely different dynamic, right? And everyone talks about it like pro, college, high school. When's the most fun you had in football? Everyone says high school, right? Because there's no pressure really. You're hanging out with your friends. You're just playing football. You get to college, you got your full ride, but you're not getting paid. Well, I wasn't getting paid, but some people are getting paid. Regardless, you're just there. It's kind of like high school. Initially, you don't really know anyone, but then it kind of turns into you're playing with your friends again. It's really team oriented. I hate to say it, but when you get to the NFL, it's a business, right? Yes, the best teams in the league buy in and they go for that team aspect. They do it like a college or a high school team, and that's what we had. Fortunately, when we went to the Super Bowl and some of those good years, is Rivera built that culture and we played as a team. But sometimes you get, and I mean, it's just not human nature. You're looking out for yourself, right? Um, I'm sitting next to Tim. Tim came in as a free agent receiver. Yeah, we're going to try to help each other, but we both know that we're competing for one spot, and I mean that's just the nature of the business. So that that kind of goes against each other, right? If you look out for yourself, you look out for the team. More you look out for the team, it helps yourself. I mean, it's a weird dynamic once you get into the NFL, but yeah, I think that definitely plays a role.
Tell us about playing with Cam Newton as your quarterback, man, because especially from the South Carolina Gamecock perspective, and then if you're a Gamecock slash Panther fan, it's a weird dynamic having seen Cam Newton kind of rip the SEC championship away from the Gamecocks. Their one chance they had to play in that title game back in 2010, and then to see all the success he had, and yet how he did it, I think, as well. Interested in hearing your perspective, having been in the room and played with him.
Yeah, I mean, he's awesome. I got when I was playing, and even after when I meet random people, that's like the one question I get is, "What was Cam really like?" Right? People want to know what he's really like. So they see from the outside or the media kind of portray him to be this goofball that just kind of dances around and just super talented. But he was an awesome teammate behind closed doors. He worked his tail off. He what is it? First man in, last man out with meetings and watching film, and he was always prepared. Yes, he likes to have fun and he likes to dance before practice when we're stretching and all that stuff. And but that just falls into him being himself, right? And I think that helped him play better. if you're going to be a hard ass coach and not let him do that, I don't think he would have become the player that he was. I don't think he would have been an MVP. I think Shula, and a lot of people don't know, Ken Dorsey was the quarterbacks coach who's now the Bills offensive coordinator. And he's had a lot of success up there. He was an awesome coach. Dorsey, kind of like Cam, was, I don't know if he wasn't Heisman, but he was the lead quarterback for Miami during their heyday. He knew kind of how to manage Cam. He had to kind of have a longer leash, right? Hey, Cam, do your thing, joke around, but then we also need to work while we're in here. But being a direct teammate of Cam, I loved playing for him. There was never a time that I ever doubted his commitment or any of that, and always he left it out on the field. Obviously, you see that from a fan and media perspective all the time. He played his ass off. So great dude.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is that players respect the work more than anything else, and if you do that, then also the authenticity probably that Cam Newton presents himself with and has gotten him a bunch of flack for. I think players probably respect that a lot more than those of us from the outside looking in. And you guys get to see that, right? You understand who they are behind closed doors, and then who they kind of present themselves as. I've made the analogy from the Gamecock perspective. Steven Garcia, I felt like, was that way as well, kind of to his detriment, right? He took some shots and didn't always maybe represent the team in the best PR way, but he was going to be who he was, and players loved it, and clearly they love playing for him, and that's the vibe I've gotten from Cam Newton as well. Most recently, he said they're not 32 guys better than him right now in the league. What do you think? You agree?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how his shoulder and his whole body's doing health wise, but regardless, overall as a quarterback and football player, there's no way there's 32 better than him.
Hmm.
Now I don't know how he fits in with different coaches and where they're at with all the other factors that come in, but I agree with that. The one thing that always made me really mad, and even watching after I was done, is when media and fans would get mad when he would get mad or frustrated after a loss or after an interception with the towel. What do you want him to do? He's showing that he takes it super serious and he's pissed, right? And I hated when people would say he's pouting. He's not pouting. He's just pissed at himself, right? That he let people down. So
Well, I
I
think it
never
is,
had.
having been one of those people. I think it's that leadership thing. It's like when you're a head coach, it's difficult to be an overly emotional head coach and have a bunch of success because your team is kind of feeding off that. Like I heard just being a Gamecock guy, it was Dell Wilkes, the Patriot, who unfortunately passed away recently, but he was an All-American player for the Gamecocks back in the 80s. And he talked about this. He's a great talker, right? A really dramatic guy, having the wrestling background, was talking about in 1984, the Gamecocks go play Notre Dame. And he looks at his head coach in a tense moment, and he's taking a drag off a cigarette. And he looks over across the way, and Notre Dame's promoted high school coach with the background is all worried and arms crossed and the whole thing. And the confidence kind of
Yep.
bled over to the team, and Steve Spurrier's swagger is legendary and the whole thing. I think that's where it comes from. But you're right. It is a double standard in a lot of ways. You can't just completely be all with the guy and love his enthusiasm and the whole thing, and then think he's not going to display any kind of negative emotion. Double standard for sure. And I get that from the player perspective, and clearly being loyal to your guy, I can respect that in a lot of ways. So that's the Carolina Panthers situation. Let's go one other thing. This Rock Hill mess, the training facility, the business part of where the Panthers are. You're a business guy. You are you know a lot more about finance and numbers and the whole thing than certainly I do. What do you make of that move? The deal just basically disintegrating before our eyes, with what's left of the training facility in progress, right there off I-77.
Yeah. So I don't know the full background or even the like micro anything to do with the details of the deal, right? I heard a lot of stuff come out like Rock Hill didn't pay their bond or whatever, and then you hear the other side that they come out and say, "Yeah, we did. They're just trying to have bad press and pull the plug," right? So I don't know really what happened. I don't know what to believe. Now, we look at it from a big picture. When Tepper bought the team, I think that was always part of his plan is to build it around growth and profitability, right? It's a business. He sees what Jerry Jones has done in Dallas. I think that's what he was going for, is having the stadium here. He obviously wanted a new stadium too. Stadium, and then a whole facility and like city basically built around this practice facility with commercial real estate and all this other stuff, right? The problem with that model, and I think he found out after the fact, Charlotte's not Dallas, right? I don't know if you've ever been to Dallas,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Frisco, Fort Worth, Arlington. My buddy lives north of Frisco. So Frisco's north of Dallas. Then you go west to Arlington, west further to Fort Worth. You're just going down, I think it's
I-20.
I-20.
Yeah, we keep going west. You go all the way out to Abilene, Texas. That's where I lived for 3 years. I wouldn't
Actually,
recommend.
I drove Phoenix to Charlotte, and I went all the
Woo,
way on 20. So I went
strong,
from El Paso up all the way through
right?
Dallas, and it was like half of the trip, which is crazy.
Right.
That's how big Texas is.
Yeah,
But
333 miles from Abilene to El Paso. They're both in West Texas. Nuts.
crazy. It's like half the continental country.
Right.
It's just Texas. But my point is, Frisco is where the star is, right? And then you got Arlington where the stadium is. And then if you go, let's do Fort Worth to Frisco. It's like an hour drive. I don't know how many miles, maybe 50 miles.
Right.
And it's all developed. Residential, commercial, like whatever that, I guess it's 20. It's just stuff the entire way. That's the equivalent of Charlotte to past Rock Hill, or we could use Charlotte to Spartanburg and putting a facility in Spartanburg, stadium in Charlotte, but the entire I-85 would be developed. It's just, they're not comparable. The markets are not comparable. I think from his hedge fund background, think about it like he bought 1 million shares in some stock, right? And he put a limit sell on it at a certain price if it got too low. Like if he just needs to get out, right, and cut his losses. I think that's exactly what happened. I think he had this going, and whatever he had in it, 200 million, I don't know how much it was. The potential past that, it wasn't what he planned on, and he just cut his losses. That's just the hedge fund mentality of it. And it wasn't going to be what he thought it was going to be. The commitments from, I think there was a medical side to it. Like he was trying to make maybe like a medical, kind of what Green Bay is doing. I don't know if you've seen anything up there in Green Bay and what they built out.
Mm-mm.
We kind of wanted to do that in Rock Hill, and I don't know if that's completely true, but I don't think it was ever going to materialize. So he just was going to cut his losses. And that's what I think happened, and it's unfortunate, obviously, for everything going on in Rock Hill, for the city and people that maybe committed to businesses and bought houses around there, hoping or banking on that facility driving growth there. I mean, it's an unfortunate situation. So I don't know what's going to happen if they're going to build out facilities around the stadium. I have no clue. I don't think anyone knows.
Right. I think you're exactly right. I read from Joe Person with The Athletic, who covers the Panthers, that Charlotte was one of about 20 cities, I think, that put in a bid for future Super Bowls. And it absolutely included the eventual future facility there in Rock Hill and the whole deal. And now, obviously, just even that proposal has to change. Just one part of where the Panthers are. From your time as a player, you didn't quite get the end of the Jerry Richardson era, did you?
I think it happened the off season after my last game. So my contract was up January of 18 after our Saints playoff loss. So I was a free agent. I think it happened that like spring, if I'm remembering correctly. So
Wait,
I was never there. I was never
right.
under contract ever.
So my question, I guess, was does this ownership stuff, the PR stuff on the actual franchise ever have trickle down effect to players? And having not been there at that time, I'm guessing you don't have direct knowledge of that, but just talking to other players in other situations, anything pop up in your mind to say, yeah, that actually can have effect? Or I'm guessing that's probably more fan stuff from just the outside.
Are you talking direct effect on the player?
Right, negatively. Like the Cleveland Browns just struggled awfully for so many years, right? In all your years in the league, I don't think they were worth a dang. And clearly,
Yeah.
from the outside looking in, ownership couldn't figure out how to make that work on the field. And you
Yeah.
had an organization like the Steelers on the opposite end of that with David Tepper, and so always really stable and strong. The Giants kind of with that perception as well.
Yeah. And obviously it starts at the top, right? You got your ownership. But then it kind of goes back exactly. It's like any management, any company, any management situation. Like we talked about with the head coach. Let's just talk about internally with the roster and the football team. He's the top, the head coach, right? Maybe you can include the GM, but you have the tiers, right? If you look at the whole franchise and the whole company, starts with the ownership. Then they have their finance and man or event. So let's say the stadium, and then you got the football wing, and then under that you got your sub managers, head coach, whoever's running, director of operations, all that stuff. So yeah, obviously, if something's going on bad or if questionable up top, yeah, it'll trickle down, just like any, I think any company.